And welcome to the Betty Eats podcast. I am Betty, and we are talking today to a very special guest, Jessie-Sierra Ross. I know that many of you know her from her Substack newsletter and also her blog. She's a longtime blogger. So welcome, Jessie. It's so good to see you, and I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I know a little bit about you, but I would love you to tell the audience about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me too. I mean, I am such a fan. It's an incredible honor to be hosted by you, so I can't wait to discuss more about food and entertaining. But yes, my name is Jessie-Sierra Ross. I am a cookbook author, a food and lifestyle blogger at Straight to the Hips Baby, a TV food personality, and a former professional ballerina. And you might be thinking, how does professional ballet go into food? And that's a really good question, and I'm sure we'll dive into it. But I look at food and home entertaining, gathering people around the table, almost like a well-run performance. It's true to the heart, but with the right elements, knowing what goes into those recipes, what goes into the table scapes, what goes into making your guests feel comfortable. That is the performance that I live for. And I run a Substack called Jessie-Sierra, The Last Bite, because I am just cheeky like that. And I love all things butter and sugar and cocktails, flowers, and really just making these incredible moments in time for my friends and family to experience together.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, we're going to have fun today. I already know this.
Absolutely.
Well, so, okay, tell me about this. So you started off as a professional ballerina, and how long did you do that?
Goodness. So training starts very early. I started at 5 years old, and I was fortunate to find some incredible teachers and master choreographers who identified my urge to move to music and never sit still very early on. And I became a professional ballet dancer at the tender age of 14, working with professionals from the Paris Opera Ballet, American Ballet Theatre, New York City Ballet, and based in Boston, Massachusetts. And I danced professionally until I took a small break in college, but until I had my first child at age 28.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So coming from the ballet world, which I know, they have their own food issues sometimes, and but kind of coming then to the food world, what was that process like? What was the transition there like?
You know, it was really healing. I'll be honest, as you mentioned, food is viewed as fuel oftentimes in the dance world, and I'm of the last generation, fortunately, that had a lot of that pressure to not eat or to not indulge. Those unhealthy body expectations have gratefully changed, and I'm so pleased with the next generation. But my time in dance really was focused on maintaining a very healthy physique, a lot of muscle and not a lot of fat. So I was 125 pounds soaking wet at 5'7". So I didn't get to have that slice of creme brulee. I didn't have that cocktail. I lived on chicken soup, yogurt, and Gatorade. And I made up for it after I was done with dancing, because I found a lot of pleasure not only in the act of enjoying these foods and plating, like appreciating a beautiful plating, but the actual technical components of creating a dish. So when I retired, I moved out to Western Massachusetts towards the Berkshires. I started my family, and I was home with 2 little kids under 3 years old going absolutely stir crazy, baby babble, like in each ear. I was going nuts. I've worked since I was 14. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I said, hey, I love to cook. I'm going to explore how to cook. I had the basics from my mother, from my aunties, but I had never really explored. So I started following bloggers. And I said, hey, these bloggers know what they're doing. I'll try their recipes. My recipes, when I tried their lovely recipes that were written and they have the beauty shot, the hero shot, their explanations weren't always great. The end product never looked like their end product. And oftentimes the timing was really off. And so I was like, how do I get from there to here? And I still have to feed supper to my 2 kids. So I started looking into recipe development and tweaking and changing and making little notes in cookbooks for what worked, what didn't work, and started entertaining at home. And after a really successful Thanksgiving dinner for about 16 people, instead of emailing out the recipes upon request, I turned to my husband and I said, I'm going to start a blog. I'm just going to write it down and show people. And that's how Straight to the Hips Baby was born. It was born through my urge to really almost nitpick, because in the world of dance, you're always performing the same exercises until you get perfection, whether it's, the hand, the tilt of the head, but that moment is never the same each time. And so I took that ethos to recipe testing and writing and having very clear directions, and same with directional photographs. We were one of the first websites to have step-by-step photographs. Now, this might be 13 years ago, and now it's the norm. Because the home cook needs to know how to make your recipes. You can't assume that everyone knows what you're talking about when you're making a roux, or when a sauce is thickened. So having that mentality of sort of repetition and also ease of understanding has been a really guiding light for me, from the transition from baby ballerina in the studio who never ate anything to this kind of food maven who I enjoy everything now and I know how to make it.
Wow. The way that you have just explained that makes so much sense to me. I absolutely see how the principles that you learned in dance totally transfer to recipe development and teaching others how to, like you said, make a roux or whatever it is. That totally makes sense. It's really kind of like a template almost of like,
absolutely,
and then also perfecting that, because I think a lot of us who cook a lot, cook for our families, like you said, we know the basics and we know what's going to work and what's not, but it's never really the same every time, but it's still delicious, and but we're following kind of a template in our head, or just things that we know. So that totally makes sense. I totally see the connection there in a amazing way.
There is one, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And then also, just talking about dance, I think also that I don't want to say wanting it to be perfect, but wanting it to be just the best to your ability, and striving kind of for excellence, because you know that it's going to be pleasing to the people that you're performing for. And so I love that. I think that is so applicable to feeding our own families. Like, I had this thing about brown food. It's so hard to make brown food look good, and so it's kind of like, how can I make this look better for my kids so that they'll want to eat it? And it's whether it's like herbs or what, toppings or whatever. But so it's kind of, like you were talking about, little tweaks and wanting to make things a little bit better. So you said you learned from your mom and your aunties, and did you kind of grow up cooking with them, or did you just really need to teach yourself? Like, well, we talked a little bit about that, but what were your memories growing up with your mom? And
it's such a special, it's a special set of memories, actually. And I discussed it a little bit in my cookbook, because I feel like food is such a direct connection to our families, our heritage, but also those that came before us. And for my family, it was very important because I'm first generation American. I'm Ukrainian American, and I come from a Slavic family. And food was not only celebration, nourishment, but it was love, it was connection, it was making sure, that challah recipe that my Nana Barbara made was still living, because it was being braided with my hands, with my mother's hands on top. It's a way for me to connect to the personal identity that you're born with, but it's also one that you can forge ahead as you create your own food identity, your own home, your own family, your own sort of food POV. So for me, some of my earliest memories is actually being a little girl. I was probably counter height. I could barely see over the counter. And I have this distinct memory of being in my mom's 1970s kitchen, formica everywhere, and she was hand beating, I think it was eggs and brown sugar and sugar for chocolate chip cookies. And I'm just staring over there trying to snag, with one hand a chocolate chip and another one trying to figure out what she's doing. So that was a very dear memory of mine. When I got older, I learned how to make blintzes, which are a Slavic specialty, a Jewish Slavic specialty of little crepes filled with savory cream cheese and farmer's cheese, and you fry them, and it's a whole day process. And my mother started me off with the hard job of folding these hot crepes, and you'd burn your little fingers, but in the end you get a crepe as a reward. Down to when my husband, then boyfriend, when we met, one of the first things we ever bonded over was cooking and food. And then our second date was him making me a risotto, which I had never had before in my life.
Wow.
But it's opening horizons and experiences. And I think for every moment, special moment, when I look back, whether it's through childhood, young adulthood, into growing my family and my business, food has somehow always been attached. And I think that's true for many of us, because we eat, we enjoy when we are happy. Sometimes we are given food when we're mourning or we're sad. We definitely eat when we're celebrating. And we think about, for others who might be in need, what can I give? And oftentimes it's food. It's a way to relate love and care and compassion.
Yeah, that is so true. That's so true too about food memories and kind of bringing a little bit of your family history in the past with you to the present, but then also making memories for your own children and into the future. That I even see it now with my daughter who's in her 20s, and if when she was younger, I was like, oh, all my kids are going to know how to cook before they leave home. It doesn't always happen that way, but now that she's living on her own, she's married, and I'll get the phone call. Okay, Mom, so how did you make this again? It is kind of a passing of the baton, but I don't know. I kind of feel still like we're holding a little bit onto the baton as well.
Well, it's such a beautiful lineage. I remember being in college and calling my own mom, trying to make mandel bread, and the mandel bread dough was not coming together. It was just this soupy mess. I'm on the phone with dough up to my elbows trying to figure out Mom, help. But learning how to cook is such a fundamental skill. But I have the same thought with my sons. I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And they're getting into it, but I think the important bit that you did, and I hope to do, is to instill that curiosity and that want to learn how to cook.
Yeah, and sometimes it comes down to need, kind of like, okay,
True.
I'm sick of eating, ramen every day. I need the one
I remember those days.
Something else, Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is so interesting. So gosh, so you pivoted, you came into starting your own blog, and so I'm sure that was a learning process as well. Your photographs are beautiful, and so I'm sure that you have come into your own style with that. How did you sort of learn and grow in that respect as well?
So this is a fun story, and I think I'm so glad you mentioned the photography, because oftentimes in food blogging, we tend to focus a lot on the recipe, and rightly so. We are making the dishes, but the photography is what sort of previews that dish to the reader.
Oh, yeah.
So when I started the blog, I was originally taking my own photographs, and the thing to know about Straight to the Hips Baby is that we recipe develop, write, style, and photograph all of our content. Is all in-house, and it's actually a party of two. So somewhere along the lines, I was making a cake, and I wanted to hold a plate with the cake on it, but I couldn't take the photo while holding the plate. And I said to my husband, hey husband, can you take this photo? And he took the photo. I looked at it on the screen. I said, aha, you're better at this than I am. Welcome to your new job. So Jonathan Ross, my husband, he is my head photographer. And we are this like dynamic duo where I'll set up the scenes, I'll do the color theory, the food orientation, how I want things set. We'll discuss angles, and it's always a working discussion, but he is the man behind the camera. And I couldn't do this without him. And
Oh.
we have developed this signature light and bright style with lush floral accents. And we started this, it was a reflection of how I tend to look at food and entertaining. I tried to do dark and moody. In fact, dark and moody was the popular type of photography when we came on the scene, and I adore it. But I couldn't make it work. It didn't fit my style. And just one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to use the light. And we only use natural light. No Photoshop. Nothing is ever retouched. There might be a slight brightening here and there, but everything is real. So when you see ice cream on my blog, that's real ice cream. That's not, frozen mashed potatoes with food coloring. If you see whipped cream, it's not shaving cream. That is whipped cream that I was, in the kitchen whipping 2 seconds ago. We work fast, we work tight, and we work with real food. So, because I want people to realize that food is not, my style of cooking is not perfection. It's very much elevated home cooking in that way. We're playing with flavors, we're playing with real from scratch cooking techniques, we're working with whole ingredients, and all the techniques and the recipes and the flavors are approachable. And that's something that has always been my North Star, because learning as a home cook way back when, it's much easier to sort of take the baby steps forward with each recipe and building on those skill sets that you're learning through each recipe post. And eventually you get to this point where you can conquer those French macarons, which was my Mount Everest for about 5 years. I couldn't get those puppies to come out of the oven, but eventually I did, and then never touched them again. But it's about learning and understanding that you can grow confident in the kitchen, that it's not just a given. You don't have to be scared. Just build and take chances and taste and figure out what speaks to you. And if the photographs bring you in first, amazing. Try the recipe. If the recipe brought you in, amazing. Why don't you check out the story or the technical points in the text? But it's about capturing a wide variety of people, talents, and skill sets.
Yeah, I love that, and I just agree with everything you just said, because I approach my food the same way. It's I didn't go to a culinary school, and so I elevated home cooking is exactly the description, and I'm the same. I love natural light. I can't do dark and moody. I love it for other people, and it's beautiful, but I don't know. I'm solar powered sunshine girl. So.
Me too, and let me tell you, photographing in New England can be tough. But we get it done. But I didn't go to culinary school either. My teachers were Julia Child, Martha Stewart, Yan Can Cook on PBS. The resources that we had as kids of the 90s, and cookbooks. And so if you can distill, which is what I love about your work, distilling the lessons so that they can be brought forward to new sort of avenues for that reader or that viewer, that's what it's all about. It's about getting people cooking one way or another.
Yeah, and I think that is so encouraging, like you were talking about, of explaining things, and so that people can see, hey, I could do this. I can just set aside a little time on a Wednesday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, and I could make those French macarons. Maybe I don't know. Those are pretty hard, but a roast chicken or a beautiful bread. Those are all doable with a little bit of time and instruction, and just, like you said, willingness to kind of try something and see where it goes. So yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your cookbook, because you have a cookbook out and it's gorgeous. Tell us a little bit about that, and what was kind of your inspiration behind that?
Absolutely. So I have a home entertaining and cookbook called Seasons Around the Table, and it focuses on seasonal gatherings. Typically, we have 4 to 5 sort of event dinners or themed sort of get-togethers, and I provide full menus using whole ingredients, seasonal flowers. I teach you how to tablescape, and it's about making it easy for you, the reader at home, to throw the party of your dreams. It's sort of like having a party planner in your back pocket, because I talk about dishware, how formal versus informal settings work, how to pair cocktails with appetizers, and if you have dietary restrictions with your guests, not to sweat it, because everyone should have a good time. I also provide my own modern home entertaining tips, because this isn't your grandmother's dinner party anymore. Though I do emphasize that you should bring out your grandmother's china if you have it, or reuse what you have, on your bookshelf or in your cupboard, your attic. Dust off, the crystal that you got at your wedding 1,000 years ago. Use it, because now is the special occasion. Don't wait for some mystical special occasion to have the good wine glasses. I grew up with a mom who loved to entertain. We always entertained on a small scale. And when I became older and was sort of, throwing parties for my larger circle of friends, and I was fortunate to marry into a very large family, and my mother-in-law was, she would host 16 at the drop of a hat, and I would just sit there with my jaw agape. I learned from my mom, I learned from my mother, I learned from Martha. I learned from those creators who came before us, and then whittled down what worked and what didn't work. And things that would get you into the living room or the dining room to enjoy the party with your guests versus being chained to your kitchen stove. Because a modern gathering, it's not the days where you hired help. It's you and perhaps a helper, one of your friends washing up the dishes. But you want to enjoy that party too. So there's a distinct sort of vision in this book about making sure that not only do you build these gorgeous menus and build the gorgeous centerpieces and table staves, but you also get to sit down and enjoy it. So it focuses on seasonal flowers, seasonal colors, ingredients, recipes, and it highlights beautiful fresh flowers as well. And I was fortunate enough to pair with Schiffer Publishing to create this book that I've been dreaming about for years. And it's been in the back of my mind for a good decade that I wanted to break down how to create parties, but also to instill, again, that confidence that we provided through Straight to the Hips Baby with recipes and cooking, but this time as the total package through Seasons Around the Table.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because you had that exposure. You had, like you said, you absorbed all of this from family and Martha. Everybody loves Martha, but it can be daunting. And I know I had mentioned that I just get sweaty thinking about hosting people, and I think part of it, of course, I put on myself, because you just want everything to be perfect. Nothing can go wrong, but I forget to enjoy myself. And so I love that you kind of have laid everything out and basically kind of taken the hand of your reader and said, come on, I'll show you. And so that's part of the sweaty part, is planning everything.
It is. I want to step into that role of your favorite auntie who comes in. She's up to date. She's cool. She's got the recipe. She's got the tricks. But I help relieve the pressure, because we should never have this feeling that perfection is the goal, because perfection oftentimes stops us from actually throwing the party.
Yes,
Perfection. We want to create those food experiences and bring the history to the table, to use the vintage plates, to use the vintage recipes with a modern spin and create big, bold flavors. But in the end, it's about sitting down to a beautifully laid table with lots of food and delicious drink, friends, family, laughter, candlelight, but that ease of knowing that you can do this and you could do it again, and you can inspire your friends. You want that party in that moment that will never be repeated again, just like a ballet performance. That moment in time is frozen, and it's meant to be savored and remembered and then looked forward to again in another iteration.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What a beautiful vision too for a book. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
So glad that came to fruition. So
Me too.
yeah. Well, I will definitely put a link to that, just so that everybody knows where to buy it and everything, in the show notes.
Thank you.
But let's talk a little bit, in the food world, we have seen kind of this rise of AI created recipes. I have been fooled myself, done a viral recipe and thought, oh, why? So, been disappointed. But when you are doing research, or maybe you are coming up with something and looking online, how do you vet recipes that maybe you want to add to your repertoire, or ones that you want to do a riff on? What do you look for in that arena?
So this is such an important topic overall in any sort of creator field, but particularly in the food creation world. You're right. I spend my life online, and I see those recipes with the photographs that aren't photographs, with the perfect strawberries, or the dollop of sauce that's completely circular. That doesn't happen in real life. So that's the first thing I tell people is look at the photographs. If there's weird shadows, if there's an extra finger on that hand presenting the platter, that's not a real recipe. But it comes to trusted sources, right? So all of my recipes are original. I would say like 98%. There are some older recipes on my site where I did take, because I was learning like everybody else, but I learned from the greats. So just like, the news cycle that we have out there, it's knowing where to go. So if you have bloggers that you trust, you have cookbook authors, Substack authors, people who you know that do good work, authentic work, and understand the direction and also the way a recipe should be written, check those resources before ever going on Facebook to a group recipe think tank, or the latest and greatest TikTok sort of super recipe. Because remember, online life is not always geared for the authentic or for something that's real. It's geared for clicks. And as someone who is always sort of steered away from paid ads or steered away from trying to go viral, I just want to make good food, and I want to make sure that you can make that good food too. Find those trusted resources, but don't fall for the fake strawberry. Don't do it. AI has a place in content creation, I think, but you gotta vet your resources and do the work. We have beautiful minds, great palettes, the eye for visuals. Let's use it, because if we don't use it, we're gonna lose it, as we used to say in the dance world.
But it's a hard one, and I think you're right. AI does have a place, but it is more as a tool, as a I don't know, something that isn't on the creative end of things. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it should be looked at almost. We have so many tools at our disposal when we're, say, writing on a computer. The different programs. I completely agree. It should be used as a tool, not the basis for creating that recipe, because AI is not going to know that asparagus, and I don't know what doesn't go with asparagus, but you're not going to make something. I saw this random recipe that's like chocolate and spinach pie, and I was like, what?
Wow.
No.
Okay. That's a stretch.
No.
Yeah. Oh man. Usually guests love to share a tried and true recipe, and so maybe you can tell us a little bit about the tried and true recipe that you're sharing with listeners today.
My pleasure, and thank you for letting me share one of my recipes, because we're talking food, so of course I'm getting hungry. But this recipe is from my cookbook, Seasons Around the Table, and it's in the fall section. I live just outside Boston, and it's pear season. And it's just, the orchards are bursting with these ripe, juicy, fragrant pears. So what I like to do is to take something that's so perfect on its own and treat it simply and respectfully. So this appetizer is it's a Pear and Manchego Cheese Puff Pastry Tart, and I make little mini ones so that we can have it with a glass of rosé, maybe a nice glass of prosecco. But it's easy, flavorful, and features those ripe pears layered on top of a mix of Spanish Manchego cheese, which is sort of like this nutty, savory cheese. I love it. It's shredded, mixed with a little bit of cream cheese, some herbs, salt, a little pepper, fresh thyme, and then you dollop that cheese mixture onto a square puff pastry. Then you layer your pears, fold in the sides of the puff pastry, maybe give it a little brush of egg wash, a sprinkle of raw sugar, some fresh thyme, bake it short amount of time later, bring it out of the oven, and then top with a drizzle of thyme infused honey, which is just a fancy way of taking a tea bag full of fresh thyme, warming it in a little bit of honey, and the oils from the herbs really spread and perfume into that honey, and it's just the most perfect bite of sweet, savory, herby, earthy, but still so light and so elegant, because food, especially my food, tends to be fancy, but it's not fussy. It's everything that you want to elevate without, as you said before, breaking a sweat.
Yeah. That sounds delicious. I could eat a plate of that right now.
I have.
Amazing.
Little white Beaujolais. It's amazing.
That sounds amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that, and I will put a link to that also in the show notes. So where is the best place for people to connect with you? You have your Substack newsletter, The Last Bite, but you also have a blog as well.
I do. I am on all the platforms all the time. So on Substack, Jessie-Sierra, The Last Bite is my newest little baby, and I love it because Substack is an amazing platform for growth and true voice, because you are writing for not only your audience, but for, I feel very free on that platform. So definitely check me out there. You can find me on my blog, straighttothe-hipsbaby.com, which is a little more formal. It's a little bit more teachable, but I still bring a lot of my quirkiness, my arts background, and a lot of storytelling to buffer that those delicious recipes. But don't worry, there's a jump to recipe button on everyone. I've heard readers. And you can find me on Instagram at straighttothe-hipsbaby. And if you are local to NBC, you can catch me on TV too, on local lifestyle shows on NBC, ABC, and CBS.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So people can contact you at any of those spots then, and especially if they have a question for you or they want more information about something. So
always,
wonderful.
I'm here.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jessie, for being on the program today. I so appreciate your time and just sharing your heart and just your expertise. And now I need to employ some of those entertaining tips that you talked about. So thank you.
I am here. I can be like the Butterball Turkey hotline at Thanksgiving. If you need help with your table state, just write me. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation.
Oh, thank you.